think we can start with, yeah.
Okay, Sriram, shall I?
Yes. Go ahead,
Yes.
type. Gopal.
So, a very good evening to all of you, to all the 50 plus participants who have joined from Hyderabad, in Hyderabad, out of Hyderabad. To all of you, welcome. We have the session by Ashwin Vishwanathan, who is a long-time naturalist, a mechanical engineer turned ecologist, a researcher at Nature Conservation Foundation. He's now actually at US. But we are extremely happy to have him on today's session. And most importantly, he is an expert in bird calls. So many birders begin identifying birds. Some start by visual identification in different kinds of habitats. But we generally tend to hear birds more often than what actually they are seen. So today we'll explore the fascinating aspect of hearing bird calls. And also this session is aimed at honing your skills into bird identification using their calls or song. So to all the participants, I would like to tell you that if you have any questions, the chat box is open. Sriram and Kishore are also co-hosts and moderators for the session. So if you have any questions, they will be answering the questions directly in the chat box. A few select questions will be also put into the meeting towards the end of the talk, and we can have these questions also answered by Ashwin during the end of the session. So thank you, Ashwin, once again for joining the session. So we would like to start with a few queries. So to begin with, could you briefly explain the difference between bird songs and bird calls? Perhaps if you can give some examples with common species, that will be very useful here.
Yeah, thanks, Gopal. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to be here. And just to respond to Farida's comment, insects were really my first love in the natural world. And it's great to be able to pick that up again and have a community where can learn more about insects as well. But yes, I love birds. And I think, like most birders, a lot of my birding was visually because that's where they are really impressive. Uh, and I think at some point that developed into birding by ear as well. And I think I'd echo what Gopal says. The moment you are birding by ear, in addition to sight, suddenly the whole world opens up. At every point of time, you are hearing something. You're not just hearing birds, but your sense of hearing really picks up. So you're always picking up every bit of sound, every bit of conversation, resolving that. And suddenly your world is not just what you see, but everything that you hear as well. And it's quite amazing. You'll be in a meeting now. If I'm talking now, I'll still be hearing birds that are calling from outside the window. And we use the word call a lot. That's just for any sound that a bird makes. But more specifically, calls are used typically for non-breeding vocalizations or non-breeding sounds that birds make. These short calls or contact calls. They're usually not associated with either the breeding season, where they seek out other individuals of their species, or in maintaining territories. Usually, that's another place where songs are used. So songs are usually more complex sounds. They sound, and I think that's why they call songs, because they sound a little more beautiful. They sound like songs. They have many complex notes. So, for example, purple sunbird. I think purple sunbird is a very common bird around Hyderabad. You all must have heard these short sounds that they make, like chup, 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 that. And you must have also heard a swi, swi, swi. So these are both what we call calls here, because they're often given in the non-breeding season, and they're not very complex. They're simple sounds. But then we also know their songs, where they whatever. I'm not very good at mimicking sounds, but that's a typical purple sunbird song. I think maybe if somebody could play it here.
Maybe Sriram, can you play yeah. So this would be
Yeah.
the song of the purple sunbird. Is that correct,
Yeah,
Ashwin?
that would be the song of the purple sunbird. And it's typically going to be given. sometime when the breeding season begins, when they are singing to other individuals, maintaining territories, and then once they've finished breeding, they're going to start mainly making these contact calls, these small chip, chip, and sweet.
Okay.
Those are the sounds they're going to make. So similarly, you'll see for many of the others, even Lotan sunbird you have around Hyderabad.
Very
Not,
rare locations.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
not around Hyderabad.
Isolated, yeah.
Huh. Let me think of some others. So actually, pale bill flowerpecker. Pale bill
Yes.
flowerpecker is an interesting one where they actually have a song and the usual. They have the tuk tuk tuk
Chick,
tuk
chick, chick, chick.
Mm, mm,
calls, and they also have like a C type call, and those two are usually non-breeding sounds, and then they have their songs itself, uh, which is they have a couple of them, the srrr,
mm,
and then they also just that undulating song. They have one more.
yeah.
Uh, I don't know how to explain
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
So many birds have these two sorts of vocalizations, but each of them can have again multiple types. There can be multiple types of songs, there can be multiple types of calls, and it's useful to get familiar with all of them. But they're often very distinctive, both the sounds and I mean the calls and songs. Um, and good example of a bird that we almost hear only calls of is Blythe's warbler. So Blythe's warbler is everywhere around us, and before you start hearing them, you think that there are no Blythe's warblers around, and that bird doesn't exist in our lives. And the moment you start hearing them, you see that they're everywhere. They're one of the most abundant birds in peninsular India, and they're always in everybody's backyards and in bushes doing chuck, chuck, chuck.
mm,
They actually have the most amazing songs, Blood Street Wobblers. And I think people here, maybe by March, April, they start making what are called sub songs that are they're either practicing some songs or they're doing young birds trying to practice, or they make these small, these softer versions of their songs. Blythe's Reed Wobbler.
Right.
Blythe Reed, yeah. And their actual songs, Blythe Street Wobbler, are full of mimicry. They are incredible. They even they mimic all sorts of birds that they've heard in their breeding areas in other places. So mimicry is often seen as a sign of complexity for birds. The more the amount of mimicry they put in, maybe the greater the chance of mating success. But
Right.
many birds tend to have mimicry.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for that. So once we start listening carefully, we realize that a single species of bird
Mm.
do not have a constant sound. So then how much variation is there for us, a particular species of bird? For example, is there a seasonal particularity for a call, or is there a seasonal variation or a time of the day? Does it cause a variation in call? Or maybe are there differences in call between the males and the females of the same species?
So actually, the answer to everything will be yes to an extent. There are some songs that birds give only during dawn and dusk, typically. For example, not only, but for example, white eyes. White eyes tend to have their complex songs given from roost, usually, just before you wake up. Even purple rumped sunbird, they do this tip, 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 tip. They do this song just before dawn and sometimes around dusk. So sometimes time of the day does matter for some kinds of songs, but it's not it's not a rule. For in terms of the number of sounds that they actually make, most birds actually have a set number of types of sounds that they make, especially these calls. And many of those are represented in Merlin as well. But better way to look at it will be to actually look at the different sounds that are uploaded on eBird on the Macaulay library and to just go through the different kinds. You'll see them having different shapes also on the spectrograms if you look at that. So you go to eBird media search and put any species and look at all the calls that are there for that bird. And that way you'll get a sense for what it looks like also on the spectrogram. So I would say that some birds, for example, Blythe's warbler has about three or four different sounds. There is a chuck, and there are a couple of kinds of rattles. Rattles are like trrr, and variations of that. So then you start getting used to them. It's not infinite. Yeah.
Right. Right. So, for the beginners, so for example, when we took part
Mm,
in the Hyderabad Bird Atlas, several new volunteers, when we started identifying birds by calls, they were really amazed. So, for a
mm,
beginner, birding by ear seemed to be kind of intimidating. So,
mm.
when identifying birds, is there a step-by-step approach to identifying birds by their calls? So, what is the step-by-step approach that we need to follow for a new person to beginning birding by ear?
Right. So I'll tell you how it's been for me. Uh, Actually, whenever I've traveled in the past, I initially used to think that I could, just listen to some calls on the phone or on the computer and then go there and try and identify birds. That often doesn't work that way for most people. It's really, really difficult to do that. So let's say at home you listen to some sounds and then you go to field and you try and identify those. That is extremely hard. The thing that actually worked for me and has now made me much better birder by ear is that at times when I didn't know bird calls, I would go and try and find every single bird that I heard around me until I knew what it was. So I think that is a really good process. So you hear something around you, make sure that you're hearing everything around you, whether you know it's what it is or not. Then go and follow it up. If you hear a chip chip sound, try and find that bird that's making the chip chip sound. The moment you're able to associate the sound with the visual, it may take some effort. You might spend half a day just trying to find that one bird. Once you've associated the sound with the visual, it immediately gets ingrained in your mind. And that happens with a lot of, and as you do that with more and more sounds, suddenly something clicks and every sound starts resolving around you. And you, at least, even if you don't know that it's a different, what bird it is, you'll immediately know that it's something different. It's something that you're not used to. And then you can go ahead and investigate. And I think that is the best process. Do not let a single sound around you be unidentified. Go and follow it up. Now you have tools like Merlin, etc., that might tell you what it is. As you've all probably realized, there's a long way to go for Merlin to learn and improve, and we'll talk about that going forward. But even if you're going to let Merlin identify it for you, you are not going to improve your own understanding of that sound. So I would say that whatever it is, follow that sound up, associate a visual with that sound, and then you'll become a better birder by ear.
Right. So, how do you personally break down, for example, an unknown call which you have just heard? So, is there a
Hmm.
way that you can categorize into some particular families and then refine it later on and then identify a species? Or suppose you hear a totally a new
Hmm.
call. What is the way
Hmm.
forward there?
So I think that largely will come from experience. I think for all of us, if we have an entire world of sounds that we're used to, we start putting them into brackets. That there are certain types of sounds that are made by warblers. There are certain types of sounds that are made by, I mean, a reed wobbler. Certain sounds that are made by a leaf wobblers. There are families of sounds that we start putting these things in, and then we'll be able to say that okay, this unusual sound that we're hearing, it doesn't quite fit anything we know, but it may be a leaf wobbler, or it may be a reed wobbler, or it may be something completely different, a minor or a drongo making a funny sound. So the moment but that I would say is something that comes with experience.
Experience.
Follow hundreds of birds up, build that those patterns in your head of the different sounds that are there, and yeah, then you can start putting these in brackets, and then it really helps to record them on your phone, or record them in whatever way you find comfortable, and then you can share them around to try to get them identified, or you yourself can listen to that again and again and go through recordings that are available for the common birds of your area to see what it fits. And I think nothing replaces that effort that's put in,
Right.
both following the bird up and taking a recording and trying to identify it yourself.
Right.
I
So, for
Gopal, I
beginners,
just wanted to add here. I think
please.
Yeah.
that's true what you said, Ashwin. I think I can relate with one of the things like greatest brain is five. I think today somebody has asked in Telangana Iverdus. At least in the survey, I hear the same call, but I don't know what bird it is. Okay, I couldn't see the bird because it is early morning, but I could able to record that call, and then later I think I might have checked with you also, Ashwin. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
And Viral, couple of people. And then also we use some other tools, and later I came to know that it is greater painted snipe. Now today, I think Pradeep I shared the same call in other group. I could able to immediately recognize, okay, this is a greater painted snipe, though it is not identified by Merlin. Once you
Yeah.
identify by yourself in the field or later, it will register in your mind. Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead, Gopal.
Right. Thanks, Sriram. So, Ashwin, for beginners, what is the quickest or the best way to learn these? Are there any kind of patterns or any mnemonics or any particular listening techniques that help birders to remember these calls, correlate with them, and then correlate with the species which can be identified with the calls? Of course, you said
Yeah.
that there
So
are resources like eBird and Merlin which actually help you in identifying and giving you some clue. So, to a new person who is very curious to hear about bird calls and identify them, what
hmm.
would be the starting point?
So as I said, the first step is to hear a call, follow it up. But while following it up, there are many people who use some tricks like mnemonics and things like you try and make it into something that you can remember. So people use different mnemonics for common hawk cuckoo. What do they use for common hawk cuckoo?
Brain,
Can
Brain fever.
Yeah, brain fever. So
brain.
brain fever. So
Yes.
that I think once you put that in your mind, then the next time that sound comes, you'll be able to associate the version you have of that sound with the actual sound. And the same thing for Indian cuckoo. People say one more bottle
Oh, is it?
and I think one more bottle. And they use various things. So I think these are I think techniques that have helped a lot of people. I don't use that so much because for me it's more about the um, maybe more about the beat or the rhythm of the sounds rather than making words
Yes,
of
when you
it.
said this,
Yeah.
so the red wattle lapping also has got a mnemonic. Did you do it?
Yeah. Did you do it? Yes.
Yeah.
So did
So,
you do it? So that really helps. And if you can make that up for everything, some people do that, and it's wonderful. They made up mnemonics for so many birds, and it really helps them remember, and it really helps also teach bird sounds. So if you're able to make up mnemonics and teach it to the next person, I think that will really help
yeah.
spread
Yes.
knowledge of bird sounds.
Yeah. Thanks. So bird calls rarely happen in isolation. So it's always
Mm.
around a context. So
Mm.
how important is the habitat and the time of day when we try to identify birds by calls?
So I always feel that 99% of birding is to know what is possible in a certain habitat at a certain point of time. Forget about the call, forget about the visual. If you have a good idea of which bird is expected where, when, then most of your job is done. So if I hear a chuck from around one of your houses in Hyderabad, it's going to be a Blythe-Street
That's
warbler.
it.
I'm not even going to think of a booted warbler. I'm not even going to think of a Blythe-Street warbler. These are not birds that are going to be there in your garden bushes. Did I say I'm not even going to think of a Sykes warbler or a
Like
paddy field
problems.
warbler?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's going to be a Blythe Street warbler. So that it's now we have the amazing ability to actually look at eBird data to try and build these correlations as well. But otherwise, it comes from practice. And if you're able to associate a habitat and a time of the year with a bird, I think that's really most of the job done. So then instead of thinking, oh my God, which of these thousand birds in India is this particular sound, you brought it down to which of these three birds that are expected in my area at this point of time, this bird. And now you even have likely birds on Merlin. I don't know how many people have used that feature. You can in at your wherever you are, you can sort birds by descending order of probability based on all of the reports. And when you do that, you can start going down in that probability to see that which of these birds do I expect in this habitat, and which of these are expected to make the type of sound or look like whatever I thought. So you're not starting from zero. You're actually starting from 99% of knowledge of what is possible there. So I think, yeah, that's it. You just it's really, really useful to build these probabilities in your mind
Yeah.
to be able to
Yeah.
identify
So then
birds.
Merlin
So
helps
some
us with the filtering.
so for example, these crested larks. So Hyderabad is full of Sykes larks, tawny larks,
Yes.
and oriental skylarks and so on. So every once in a while, you may ask the question why I've taken a photo. It looks like a Malabar lark. It is not likely to be a Malabar lark, you know. So you can put that out of your head by looking at distributions, by looking at what is possible, and then you bring it down to two possible larks with crests in Hyderabad. Is it a skylark or is it a tawny lark? And then you can figure out what it is based on finer details.
Right. So are there any typical habitats where birding by ear becomes more prominent than birding by sight or any other means? So what are the habitats, where the birding by call is most important?
Yeah, so the only habitats where birding by call is not incredibly important are maybe big water bodies where you have birds very far away and you need a spotting scope or something to look at them. These are not birds that make a lot of sounds, ducks and storks and so on. But even among them, geese are very vocal, quite good to identify by sound. Similarly, cranes. These are also birds that are very useful. It's only some waterfowl and a few other birds, not to show waders. Waders also have distinct vocalizations, distinct sounds. So even that is really useful to know sounds to be able to identify. So I would just say that there are very, very few habitats where birding by ear is not extremely important. Almost
Right.
everywhere is it important, but especially important in dense forests. If you
Mm.
go at dawn to dense forest, you're not going to be able to see anything. But actually, there are about 15 or 20 birds making sounds around you. So being
Mm.
able to get familiar with that is extremely important. In
Mm.
other places, in open areas, you can still wait and try and find the bird, try and see the bird, but you may not be able to do that under many circumstances in forests.
Right. Right. So, like I said before,
Mm.
for a beginner, they feel that birding by ear is always intimidating. But even for experts, some very close calls, for example,
Mm.
green versus greenish warbler, or sometimes booted warbler or blitzreed versus Sykes warbler,
Mm.
they're very, very close calls. In such
Mm.
situations, how do you attempt in distinguishing them between the species and then so
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a challenge for everybody. It's a challenge for us. For most experienced earbirders as well, these are challenges. So we need these small tricks to be able to figure them out. One of the tricks will come with habitat and behavior. So that is very useful for the Acrocephalus and Iduna genus warblers. So that's Blythe's Paddyfield, booted sykes, etc. Their habitat and behavior become really important. If it's like a dense bushes and the bird is skulking inside, low down, that really points to it being a Blythe's warbler more than anything else. So then your challenge is, can I establish that this is not a Blythe's warbler? That should be the first question that's asked. Similarly, if you have a bird hopping around in the open in a grassland or agricultural area between bushes, there the most likely bird that does that is booted warbler. So then you have to ask yourself, is there a reason for me to think this is not a booted warbler based on the sound it's making? So I think going by habitat, going by probabilities, and trying to eliminate the most likely bird is one good way about that. The second thing is practice. As I've always said, you have to keep listening, keep recording, and then trying to figure out what it is based on what is available in all the resources you have, or you can share it on WhatsApp groups. I think that's really important. To be able to identify these birds, you need to listen to hundreds of them. And luckily, we have the opportunity to do that. It's the same thing with the pipits. It's not that there's any dearth of paddy field pipits. You step outside, you'll have loads of paddy field pipits. The moment you get used to all these paddy field pipit sounds, you'll figure out what is not a paddy field pipit.
correct.
Similarly with green and greenish warbler, similarly with Blythe's reed and others. There are some other tricks also that you can use. People say disyllabic versus trisyllabic, greenish and green warbler. That is something that again takes a little getting used to. You can figure out what that means. You can also uh, record it and see what it looks like on the spectrogram on Merlin. And both of them have very distinctive spectrograms. They have distinctive shapes when it shows up on Merlin. So that is one way to be able to figure it out. Especially greenish. Greenish has a pretty standard shape. Green tends to vary a little bit, but it tends to have more ups and downs. The way I try and identify booted versus Sykes versus Blythe is with a combination of two things. One is the speed of the sound. Blythe typically tends to be slower. Sykes tends to be tuck 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 tuck, tends to be much faster, like thick billed wobbler. These tend to be faster. So you can that is one way you can look at it. It's not just the isolated single sound, but it's actually how these different sounds are put together. Uh, Booted for me sounds like pied bush chat, and none of the others sound like pied bush chat. So if it's not sounding like pied bush chat, like truck, truck, it's not a tuk. And if it sounds like pied bush chat, everybody get familiar with pied bush chat because it's all around you, and they make a number of calls and they have a song. Get familiar with that, and if it sounds like that and it looks like a brown wobbler, it's likely a booted wobbler. So you can build these associations in your mind and try and
Yeah,
identify through
so
that.
which means you have to pay a lot of attention to the exact timbre of the sound which is being produced, I suppose.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
think in general, don't hear a single sound without following it up, and then everything will follow from that.
From there. That's
Yeah.
that's very nice. Thank you. So for somebody who start to learn birding calls, what are the probable mistakes that they are tending to make, and then how can they avoid them? Now, especially when identifying birds with from the calls. What are the most
Hmm.
common errors that people tend to make?
Um, I think sunbirds are a very common group of errors where I think without experience, both purple and purple drum sunbirds can make pretty similar sounds at times. Um, but again, with practice, they'll start separating out in your minds, in people's minds. But I think, yeah, wobblers, sunbirds, what are the other common sources of mistakes? I think these are mostly it for us. Pipits,
Prenias?
uh, Prinias, yes, yes, Prinias. But Prinias, the great thing about Prinias is the moment you start identifying them by sound, you're
It's much easier.
actually
Yes.
fine.
Hmm.
Yeah, if you're trying to identify them by looking at them, you're going to make a lot of mistakes, especially with jungle Prinia.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
where if you're actually listening to them, it's very straightforward. They have very different sounds, but if you looking at them, I still struggle. Like people should have a photo of a funny looking Prinia, and it's very difficult to say what it is. So I would say really as soon as possible, start identifying those by sound.
So if there is a step-by-step way of starting to learn bird calls, so
Hmm.
which species should what a beginner start learning, or which family of birds which they should start focusing and learning those calls first, and then trend down to the other species? Is there any particular
Yeah, that's a
family?
great question. I would say instead of going by family or going by um, the kind of bird, go by what is most common. Get familiar with the most common bird in your area first, what you see around your house, whether it's common myna or black kite or whatever it is, and then move ahead from there. Make sure that that your familiarity uh, increases as a bird becomes more and more common. So don't immediately, I would say it doesn't really help to try and become familiar with uncommon wobblers or pipits or something in the beginning. Get familiar with the most common birds. Get familiar with paddyfield pipit, every kind of sound that it makes. What does it do when it's doing this tuk tuk tuk? Its usual chip chip call. What does it do when it's singing and displaying? It sounds exactly like Ashibrania when it's displaying. I don't know how many people have heard that. It goes up in the sky and it does that twee 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 twee.
Yes.
And get familiar with everything that the common birds around you do, all the sounds, and then start moving slowly down the progression of birds that become less common, move away from home. If you're very familiar with the birds around home, already the ability to resolve sounds in your head would have come up, and then it'll no longer be so difficult. It's like playing guitar and singing. Not that I can do it, but try to make an attempt. It's really difficult. So initially, when you're actually trying to uh, play chords on a guitar, you can't do anything else. All your focus is over there, and you're not able to sing alongside it or do anything else. And suddenly one day you'll find that you're able to do it because your body has become familiar with that. You're able to do things with your hands while at the same time make use of your mouth. Uh, Another example is with plants. Now, I don't know how many people here are good with plants, but plants at some point, trees, they all look the same. Every tree looks the same, every leaf looks the same. It makes absolutely no sense. Start putting in that effort, get familiar with the common trees around you, and you may not be able to identify every tree anywhere else, but suddenly every tree and every leaf at some point will suddenly start looking different. There's a bit of a switch that goes off in your mind. I think there's a capacity that develops that then again makes it very easy going forward. So there's an initial slightly steep learning curve, but you're familiar with the sounds made by the top 10 or 20 species around you, and then suddenly every sound will start sounding different, whether you know what it is or not. And then you're on a great trajectory. It's going to be really easy to go forward from there.
Yeah, so listening more is, I think, most important here, and then slowly come into the track of identifying birds by bird calls. So I would like to
Mm.
follow up with the today's way of what you call listening to calls. 15, 20 years we did not have any AI. Very few
Mm.
people have had
Mm.
recorders. So today we have a lot of methods and a lot of technology involved, and apps such as Merlin,
Mm.
Raven Pro, BirdNet, which help in identifying bird calls from the field or whenever you have access to the
Mm.
internet. So, how
Mm.
reliable are these, and how can one put this into a good use?
Yeah. So I'll start by saying that there is no uh, machine learning algorithm out there at the moment for any part of the world that is better than experienced humans. Even now, even in the US, there are sounds that you can pick up as a human that are distant, that are slightly complicated, where there's wind, that Merlin cannot pick up. Although Merlin does extremely well in the US. So I've seen that with the experienced observers, they're picking up so much more than what Merlin can pick up. So I'll just start off with that. That actually, we are very far from having machine learning algorithms that can outcompete humans. That's number one.
Yes, for now at least.
Yeah, I think that will remain the case because for many years, and at some point maybe it'll be better, but then there is so much complexity. It's You think of it a little like by sight. When you have something hidden behind twigs and leaves, when is a photo ID going to be ready to be able to figure out what that is? It's going to be hard. It requires so much training information that maybe one day to reach there, but it's it's still evolving, and humans can still be better, assuming you put in the time and practice. Uh, the next thing is that Merlin Sound ID is an incredible tool to start off with, and it is only going to be as good as we are going to make it. So it really is in our hands to be able to get all the recordings that are needed to be able to train Merlin Sound ID. So you see that for India, we are at I think only about 40 odd percent of the species that are actually trained in Merlin Sound ID. And so many common birds that are not, like you can see Blythe-Reed warblers not trained. Why is
Yes.
Blythe-Reed warbler not trained? It's because there are so many mistakes in the training data. So every time they try to do it, it's not performing well. So then they drop the species. And this is what I've understood. That's the same thing for house crow. Try bringing out a model for house crow. It doesn't perform well. So then the crows are dropped. So these are ones that there isn't enough training data at the moment to make these models perform well. So what we need are good recordings or decent quality recordings of many of these species uploaded as much as possible and to the correct species ID. Not what Merlin tells us at the moment, but we have to Go to the house crow that lives around the house, get a good recording, get the repertoire, and upload those using best practices as wave files, trimmed, and now it automatically normalizes on Macaulay. So the more decent recordings we are able to upload of our common birds, the better it's going to serve us going forward for our common birds. So I think that is something we really need to do in India. We are a bit behind in our sound ID. And considering it's becoming such a useful tool, we have to try and advance it as much as possible, as soon as possible.
Right. So how are the comparable apps, like this Raven Pro, and BirdNet
So
also
Raven and Raven
performing
Pro
the same?
are sound editing apps. They are not sound ID apps. And Raven Pro are very useful for us to be able to edit our sounds, our recordings, and upload it to eBird or any other platform, Zenocanto or anywhere else. So Raven and Raven Pro are the slightly more advanced equivalents of Audacity and Ocean Audio. Except that Raven and Raven Pro also allow you to do some analysis of bird sounds that Audacity and Ocean Audio may not be able to do. So those are sound editing apps. The ones that can identify birds for you will be Merlin and BirdNet.
BirdNet.
And yeah, so BirdNet has some really nice algorithms that people are able to set up in other devices and have them recording. I think it's these scripts are available publicly, so it really helps people modify them and do things. So I think for research, BirdNet, what BirdNet has come up with is really helpful. But I think for birders, it's best to just use Merlin and focus on Merlin because it's going to do things for you offline. It's going to do things within an ecosystem that we understand at the moment. So they're not so different. Both have the same capability, similar capability. But I think whatever training data we produce will can directly be annotated, and then can go into training the Merlin algorithm.
Right. Right.
Hmm.
So at the moment, we don't see any of these apps or devices replacing humans in terms
Not
of
even
birding.
close.
So I
Not
think
even
we
close.
still have the hobby to ourselves.
Yeah, yeah.
And all of the birders who are there in today's meeting also are very, very important for the birding community.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So, so I would like to ask you on a personal note. So,
Hmm.
was there any memorable moment where you initially identified a bird purely by bird call, and then that eventually led to an exciting discovery, some maybe a new species or something which is
Oh.
challenging for you to learn, something unique in terms of call-based identification?
Hmm. Um, Not new species, but I've had some very exciting personal times with hearing new leaf warblers. So I've always liked leaf warblers and listening to their sounds and seeing how they're different from others. As much as anything because of the fact that they're migratory for us in the south. And the first leaf warbler that we hear around home or here in our general area is an exciting time. And then we see what that leaf warbler is, and then you start getting familiar with all of these sounds. And just like that, I've got this fascination for various leaf warbler sounds. So then, as you go to different parts of the country, you start hearing leaf warbler sounds that are slightly different, and then you investigate, and then at times it ended up being some different subspecies of greenish warbler, and then you suddenly understand that an entire area has a different subspecies of greenish warbler that comes from a different part of the world, which is a really exciting find. You're not seeing them when you see them, you can't make out what's going on. They look like greenish warblers, but these exciting findings that okay, this is a different population here that has a completely different sound that it makes. I think those have really excited me over the years. So everywhere I go, I try to figure out which leaf wobblers wintering.
Yeah. So that's very interesting to know that even these minor variations, can actually be due to some subspecies change or some population or race difference
Yeah,
in the within the same species. So if you
yeah.
would like to give a message to the new
Oh,
bird
sorry. I'll give an
watchers who
example.
just who just
Uh,
want to start birding with calls, What would be a message that you would like to give?
So I'll just add something to the previous
Yes,
answer.
please.
One thing that led to some new understanding for India was Eastern yellow wagtail. At some point, about 7, 8, or maybe 10 years back, we thought that there were no Eastern yellow wagtails in India. It was considered hypothetical that these are populations that don't come to India, and that's because amazingly we were not listening to them. And then
Right.
at some point, at least I started getting quite fascinated with Eastern yellow wagtails. And then at some point, I started recording them and seeing how they're different. All the knowledge was already there, produced, and how their calls are different. And then suddenly the finding was that in all over Northeast India, it's Eastern yellow wagtail, in the Andaman, there's Eastern yellow wagtail. Even in places like Hyderabad, there's Eastern yellow wagtail
Yes,
coming
Mujira.
in the south, in Sri Lanka. Suddenly we see that actually, if we were listening to these wagtails over the years, you'd actually realize that they're coming from a completely different part of the world that we thought they were coming from, which
Mm.
is incredible.
Yeah.
Sounds can be that important. Then now our understanding is that we have to the western parts of India, there are wagtails from maybe northwestern Asia and parts of Europe coming in, and then we have to southern and eastern India. We have wagtails from northeastern Asia coming in. Completely different understanding of these species. And for anybody who hasn't listened to yellow wagtails, next time listen to yellow wagtails and get recordings. And you'll see, I think in Hyderabad, you'll find that there are two different kinds of sounds that yellow wagtails make. And that'll be quite exciting. Okay,
Fantastic.
and
Yeah.
to your latest question,
Yeah. So, what is your message for the new listeners, bird listeners?
don't leave any sound uninvestigated. Whenever you hear a sound, make sure that you try your best to find out which bird that sound is coming from. Go into the bushes, like walk around, try to find which tree that sound is coming from. Try and make sure that you find the source of that sound. And I think that is such an important aspect in growth as a earbirder.
Right. Fantastic. Thank you, Ashwin. Sriram, over to you. If you have
Yeah.
questions from
So
the
we don't have
audience,
any
you may
question,
ask.
but anyone has anything you want to ask, please raise your hand. We'll unmute you. You can ask the question directly. I think only one question was there, but I answered. What are some of the other bird families who should be preferably identified by sound? I think quite a few
Hmm.
families. Ashwin, maybe some families are much easier to identify by sound rather than by pictures, right? Mostly.
Nightjars.
Yeah, nightjars by sight and also by sound,
Hmm.
definitely. But I feel warblers are much easier by sound rather than by taking pictures.
Yeah,
So, I would like to
warblers
add
are
a
easier,
point
pipits are
here.
easier.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Ashish Pity has actually mentioned it. Mimicry in birds.
Yeah.
That could actually confuse us from one bird to another bird. So how
Hmm.
do we try and, identify the right bird when there is a mimic which is present in the same habitat?
Yeah, again, that's a matter of experience. And I think if people have reached a level of experience to be able to think about what sound that mimic is making, I think the battle is already won. If you think that the mimic is making the sound of a shikra, great, then you're able to already these sounds are making sense in your head. And then I think it's a natural thing to figure out. We realize that mimics are making these sounds, and then we get a sense for when is it a mimic and when is it not. Sometimes it's really hard to say. Sometimes you can say based on how often it's making it, or the frequency at which it's making sounds, how metallic it sounds. There are various ways, but mimics are incredible. Sometimes it's impossible to tell that a mimic is making it, like singing bushlark or sometimes leaf birds and racket-tailed drongo. They can make exactly the sort of sound the bird makes. If you're able to tell the bird whose sound it's making, I think that's great. And other things are the rest of it can be figured out. And I'll just echo what Ashish has said here also, that do not use Merlin as the truth while hiding. It's not close to that yet. Use it as an indication, maybe to guide you to look for the bird. If there's a sound that's there, say, okay, maybe this bird is there, and you go and try and find it and then figure out for yourself. Never assume that a bird is there just because Merlin has said it's there. I think
Right.
that's a really important.
Yes. Don't trust Merlin completely.
Yeah.
Your
Use
intuitions
it
are
use
much.
it as a small indicative tool. That's all. And then it's for you to listen to that sound again and make sure, am I actually hearing this bird? If Merlin tells you that there's a tiger flycatcher, listen to the sound of a tiger flycatcher. Is there really a tiger flycatcher here? Take a recording of what Merlin thinks is a tiger flycatcher, and then we'll figure out that it's not a tiger flycatcher. That, or similarly with mallard.
Yes.
There are domestic ducks. Domestic ducks, many of them have descended from mallards. So Merlin may pick them up as mallards. Now that doesn't mean we have a wild mallard around us. So
Totally
yeah,
correct.
I
We do
think that's
have
really
record. Yeah,
We do
important.
we do
have
have.
such issues in and around Hyderabad with
Yeah.
Yeah.
those calls, the
Vijit,
tiger
go ahead and
flycatcher.
ask your question.
Mm.
Bridget, yeah, you can ask your question.
Uh, yeah, I'd like to ask about flycatchers specifically. I'm a bit unsure how to go about them since I'm someone who's extremely reliant on Merlin. I'm sort of a casual bird. I occasionally
Mhm.
go out to either my school or to KBR, and flycatchers have always stumped me. Merlin has misidentified the freaking Tickle's blue flycatcher as tiger flycatcher sometimes,
Mhm.
and I can't differentiate the tiger flycatcher from the red-breasted or even the Asian brown. So it's a bit
Okay.
of a confusing thing for me.
So it's nice that you have a very focused challenge over here. You're interested in flycatcher specifically. I think what you really need to do then is to get recordings of them. Get recordings of them and try and figure out for yourself based on whatever recording you've taken, compare it with what is there, what is uploaded online on eBird or the Macaulay library, and then see whether it fits. It can be done casually. Do this on days when you don't have many other things to do. Take a few recordings of what you hear, try and compare it with what is around, and then slowly be patient, and slowly you'll get a sense for which ones, what the differences are. I don't know whether you've seen the BirdCon India article about red-breasted and taiga flycatcher. There are some tips on how to tell their sounds apart. Actually, red-breasted and taiga flycatcher have distinctly different sounds. Taiga flycatcher is like a very fast trrr, and red-breasted actually every note
Has it?
is
Yeah.
more spaced apart. Trrr. I mean, I can't reproduce it, but start listening to them rather than what Merlin tells you, listen to sounds that have been uploaded, and then you'll find that uh, you're getting more familiar with separating them. But I think that is the best way.
Yeah, there was also
And
one more question from in the
yeah,
previous discussion which we had. So, can we locate the direction of the bird from its call, especially, the calls like coppersmith barbet who keeps tilting their head, rotating their head?
Mhm.
How can we, so in an attempt to follow the source of the call, can we use the bird calls, or how can we improve on tracking the bird from the call?
Most often, yes. Most often, yes. I think it's useful to be aware of behavioral aspects, like Gopal said. Um, a bird can be in the same place, but based on where it's turning its head and which direction it's facing, you can feel it's coming from different places, or you can feel it's becoming soft, becoming loud. Doesn't necessarily mean the bird has come closer or it's gone away. Again, that is a matter of practice, and you find a few coppersmith barbets when they are calling around you, and you'll start figuring out where this coppersmith barbet is likely to be when it's calling. Similarly, so for many birds, it's especially flycatchers, warblers, etc. They're often close to you. It's not very difficult to pinpoint the source of the sound, but for some birds, it's really difficult. Owls, for example, owls, many even scops owls can throw their voices. You think it's coming from right next to you, but actually it's somewhere else. Uh, so that can be quite confusing.
Right.
Kobita, go ahead, ask your question.
Hi Ashwin, this is Kubita.
And
This regarding the tickles, flycatchers, the both the male and the female they spend a lot of time in our garden, and I have noticed that there are times when maybe in the afternoon, the male especially is sitting in a tree in the shade, and he's chittering and chattering and having almost like a long, very, nuanced conversation. I wonder what that is about. It's a long, I mean, I've actually stood and listened to the entire repertoire, and it's a long thing. And he trills and he ticks and all sorts of things, but very muted, not loud. It's almost like he's talking to himself. What is that?
Yeah, I'm not sure I know the answer fully to that, but that is what we would call a sub song or a
Oh,
wobble.
I
They're
see.
wobbling.
Okay,
Yeah, that and maybe Ashish or somebody can answer this.
maybe
Yeah.
Ashish,
Um,
can you help? I've just enjoyed it so much that, and
Yeah.
every time I hear it, I'm like amazed, It's just like he's having a nice, lovely little conversation. It's amazing. The number of different notes,
you have a
the
recording,
tone.
Kavita?
It's
Yeah, the tickle
Kobita, it's
track.
telling you something. You have to listen harder.
Thank you, Ashish. I
Perhaps,
actually sometimes
perhaps
think of that.
complaining about all the development around.
Long story.
Yep.
Yeah, long story. Lovely. Thank you.
Do share that call, Kavita, if you can.
I'll
If
try to
possible.
record it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, sure. I'll try
yeah,
to
May,
record it.
yeah. Ashish,
may I say something?
yeah,
Yeah.
Yes, please.
About bird calls, there's a different angle. In India, bird calls are our culture is full of bird calls, like whether it's Shastriya Sangeet or other film songs. So when let's say somebody sings about the papiha and the feeling of the two lovers and the papiha is calling, and you've not heard a papiha and the tone, the timbre, the quality of that call, you'll not understand what emotion the singer is trying to convey. It's like, seeing a picture of a ice cream and then thinking that, yes, I've had a lick of strawberry ice cream. That is also something that you have to follow and hear the call, and only then you are able to imbibe the emotion that culture feels for the bird.
Thank you, Ashish, for that particular angle, which we did not discuss in today's session. Yes, we have a few more questions.
Anshul, I think, yeah.
Anshul,
Yeah. So I had this question. I recently came across this paper. It was very interesting to me. The paper is titled Experimental Evidence for Compositional Syntax in Bird Calls. This is a paper from 2016 where a scientist studied the Japanese gray tit and found that they seem to have specific words to alert each other or like to describe a snake. My question is that do you think that this is more of pseudoscience? And if not, do you think that this is something worth exploring in regions like India?
you may send the paper to Ashwin. He will go through that.
I will do that.
Ashwin,
Yeah,
you're
but
muted
I
now.
think this it's certainly worth exploring. I think especially for birds that are quite social, there are many complexities in the sounds they make, and I think there is evidence that they pull together different phrases that may indicate certain things. So uh, yeah, but do send me the paper. I'll take a look.
I should do that. I'll send it to Gopal sir. Me and Gopal sir, we have sat through a bunch of recordings in the past before, when I
Uh,
was working on a small project in Dr. Shankar's lab. Um,
But I'd also suggest that so I'm not a sound researcher. So I think there are people who are much better placed to answer academic questions about sounds. And you could try and reach out to the people in Mohali. I think they've been studying babblers and
Yes,
babbler vocalizations, Manjari
fabulous.
Jain and co. Also, Isa Tirupati, there's so much sound research
Really, yeah.
that's happening there. And that's closer
Yeah,
to
for
home.
Hyderabad, of course, now.
TFR Hyderabad, I was going to say that. Yeah. I think maybe Anusha has already
I don't
come to
know.
some Atlas meetings or works.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Unfortunately,
you
there
have
is
so
no,
many
yeah.
people around who can, yeah, answer these academic questions. I think it'll be really useful if you can talk to them and
Yeah.
get
thank
better
you.
answers than
I
I can
really
give you.
appreciate it.
Anirudh, you
Anirudh,
can
go
ask.
ahead.
Thank Anshul. Anirudh, are you there, Anirudh? You're muting yourself and talking, huh?
Anirudh, go ahead. Yeah, looks like he has some issue with his device. Okay, Vikas asked one question, Ashwin.
Hmm.
To your observation on the house crow, do you think regional dialects can confuse Merlin?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, regional dialects, not just for house crow, but also large bill crow. I think large bill crow is also so complex that it confuses Merlin and it messes up these two. So we need, I think, a wide representation of vocalization, especially for large bill crow, I would think,
So
where
then,
house
if
crow is
the
a little more
representation is
present.
even wider, the confusion is also even wider. I must
Yeah.
add to that point. So then
Hmm.
the accuracy in identification also may go down.
So yeah, Ashwin, I think we wanted to ask one more thing. I think which Ashish also asked in the chat, which is like, is there anywhere, any place where the mnemonics are placed, like a book or somewhere where we can refer, like a dictionary of mnemonics which are available for reference?
That would be really nice. But I'm not aware of such a source that exists. So maybe somebody should start it off and, a public document, and then we can all put in the mnemonics that we've thought of for those birds. I think that can be really nice.
Oh, it'll be interesting. Yeah. So Ibrahim, you have a question? You
Yeah,
can
I
ask.
think Anirudh also is
And
back online.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
yeah, Anirudh,
is my voice audible?
yes.
Yes, yes. Now you
All
can.
right. So about the Tickles Blue Flycatcher, we also have a pair of Tickles Blue Flycatchers. They have nested for like 2, 3 years now.
Hmm.
And one thing I've noticed multiple times when we leave for birding trips early in the morning, as early as 2, 3 a.m. and even at 7 a.m., 12 a.m., 7 p.m., all kinds of odd times we hear them calling. It's not just the song, but also their calls. And they call during the daytime, they call during the nighttime. I wonder when they rest. I have no clue what's happening. I tried to research about it, but couldn't really find some solid answers.
It's your light pollution.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
quite likely to be
Yeah.
that, yes.
So I think this is also possible because in I think Ketan is
Even
one of
bulbuls.
the yeah
It's the same
Ketan
thing for
has
bulbuls
a
too.
home where
Hmm.
we did see Tickets Blue Flycatcher continuously active feeding at night also. That's because there is a light and probably it's breeding also. That is the time where it's very active calling and also continuously feeds at night also throughout the night.
Yeah. So at home, there's a bright street light outside, and I even have Ashiprinya calling in the middle of the night,
Oh,
calling, singing in the middle of the night. So light can be really confusing for birds this way. But that said, there are birds that are night singers, not in India so much. But some of our, for example, birds like Blythe-Reed Warbler and some others actually sing through the night in their breeding areas in parts of Scandinavia and other places. There's a whole group of birds that are called night singers. Of course, because there's more daylight, but also actually through the night. So that's an interesting phenomenon, but not quite applicable here.
yes, Srijit.
Yeah, one more thing. I was seeing as what is that? The previous few discussions were about bird communication. I'd like to add one thing. So, my favorite bird, or at least one of my favorite birds, is strangely the Indian peafowl, and I've sort of been trying to study its vocalizations and at least some of the meanings of its calls, and there isn't really much information available about the Indian peafowl's vocalizations and their meanings. So I've been cross-referencing videos with other poultry like chickens and turkeys and trying to understand, since farmers do have a somewhat decent understanding of their chickens' calls, like what call is for a predator, what is their egg laying call, and some of the calls like the cooing and the clucking to the chicks are similar in peafowl, but there isn't much information available. So, what exactly is the state of uh, bird communication research in the country right now?
Um, Nothing as far as I'm aware for peafowl. Again, maybe there is something, but I'm not aware of it. So I would encourage you also to write to these labs that study bird sound.
Yeah, I've noticed very strange vocalizations in them as well. Like once I
Hmm.
was approaching a peafowl, it was clucking at me, clucking, and yeah. And they also, when they fly, they make a sort of cock cock cock
Alarm.
call.
Alarm call.
It's yeah, it's an alarm call while flying, and there's another alarm call while walking on the ground as well. Well, it's a bit strange, so I it intrigues me.
Yeah.
Yes,
What
there
I
is a
Nice,
lot
can,
of
nice
yeah.
difference
observation.
here. Also, when you said you're staying nearby the KBR park, it is very urbanized area. So the birds in these urban habitats behave quite differently from the ones which are actually away from human habitations. And then when you approach them, they behave differently.
Yeah.
There are a lot of differences, but not sure if there are any studies which are actually going on. You'll still.
But Srijit, what I can suggest was you can create a project, actually create a trip report by studying only p-folds. What I mean to say was add all the calls, whatever you're seeing. Let's say for a month, right? You try to record calls. I'm doing it for a house sparrow at my home. Probably I'll share it in that. You can see at what time the call. For me, it is a house sparrow. It sings on the same branch every day in the morning time. After some time, it will changes the branches and sits from other place. So similarly, you can create a trip report in eBird and start recording calls or videos and put it in that trip report and share it. Maybe it will be useful for others also to see that.
I'll try to do so whenever I go out because I don't actually live near any birding places or at least go to them regularly. I was previously a student of HPS Begumpet. I did most of my birding and bird research independently there. And that's where I sort of got off on birding and peafowl research, I guess.
Okay.
But I'll try recording the calls whenever I go out.
Okay. So Kirti, you can
So
ask.
to the last question of today's session.
Yeah.
Hi, I actually have a relating couple of questions which are very related. The first is I'm just curious to understand whether bird vocalizations are evolving over time. Uh, it may be because of urbanization or other environmental challenges. So, if this vocal patterns are shifting, could this make identification based on calls more challenging? Does this warrant more research, or what's your opinion or take on this? Is one thing. Another follow up to this is um, uh, from a behavior point of view, not the identification point of view for the calls, why do birds mimic? I've heard many things like it could be to distract the predators, but what could be other reasons that they keep doing it, especially certain types of birds?
Fantastic question.
Hmm.
Okay. So let me answer your second question first. So about mimicry. I think there are many reasons, many theories as to why birds mimic. I think one of them is, you're right, to confuse predators. Uh, Maybe one of the reasons why birds like drongos and leaf birds and all mimic predators so much. But there are also, I think, mimicry is thought to be a sign of complexity in bird song. Some of the best mimics are actually mimicking in song, not in their usual everyday calls. So they have they put in notes of different birds, and the understanding is that the more mimicry you're able to bring in, the more complex your vocalization is, and therefore the better the suitor you are, the better the mate choice. So, birds like Blythe's reed warblers, singing bushlarks, shrikes, long-tailed shrike, bayback shrike, all of them put a lot of mimicry into their songs. And the understanding there is the more mimicry, the more complex, and therefore the better choice you are as a mate. So that is one of the prominent reasons. Now, why Racket-tailed Drongo just goes and does so much mimicry, I'm not entirely sure. Um, yeah, but it may have something to do with general communication in mixed flocks. It might have something to do with predator avoidance. I think there are multiple possibilities there, and I don't know whether there's a complete understanding there, but there is some research that you can look up about great rackettail drongo, especially from BR Hills by Samira, researcher. I think she's been studying them for many years. So there'll be some insights you can draw from there. Yeah. What is your first question again? Sorry.
The
Now there are
As the
urbanization.
birds evolve, are there changes in
Oh
call?
yeah, that they have, and I think there's evidence also, even with birds like Sholokilis that are in now fragmented in some populations in high elevations of the Western Ghats. There are different isolated populations of the same species that appear to have evolved slight differences in their songs. Now, this is not, I think, going to be much of a problem for identification because these differences are too subtle for us to really, be confused by because we are not thinking at such fine scales. But yes, there are differences, and it's certainly an important source of research. Even in our urban birds, they are changing vocalizations in many places. And what does that mean for the birds themselves? And what does that mean if these connections are brought in again between urban and non-urban birds? I'm not fully sure what that means, but it's an important avenue of research.
Right. So with that, I would like to thank Ashwin for sparing his time during his visit in US to take time to help us know more about bird calls. I also thank Sriram and Kishore for helping in moderating this session, and also all the participants for taking their time out today to join the session. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
We will have this session recorded, and maybe in a while we will have it available online for those who would like to re-watch it, or those who have actually missed can also
Missed it.
watch this again.
Thank you, Ashwin. Once again, thank you for always being there. This is the second session. I hope we are going to do more sessions with you later. Thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
organizing this and having me here. And I hope I can come and join the Atlas at some point. Let's see.
Sure, we're
Yes,
going to
please.
call you for final season.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.